Howdy folks, your friendly neighborhood Kanaju's here with a video I've been looking forward to for months. Longtime subscribers may remember that I previously did a video critiquing and scoring the first 4 expeditions last year. I had a pretty cool system where I scored each individual element that I thought contributed to a successful expedition. Now this video was originally going to be a follow-up to that one, with the next 4 expeditions scored, but instead I want to try something different. Welcome to All No Man's Sky Expeditions Ranked and Reviewed. Summer 2022 edition. The definitive tier list. Ultimate edition. So instead of using boring tiers like everyone else, I'm introducing a twist. My tiers will be based on No Man's Sky's own upgrade class system. S-class expeditions will sit on top. These are rare and valuable things. These expeditions have great stories, great gameplay, great rewards. I'm talking the best Hello Games has to offer. Just below that, we have A-class expeditions. These are also great, if not as transcendent as S-class expeditions. B-class expeditions are less impressive. This could be due to lame milestones, lackluster rewards, or some other shortcomings. Not bad by any means, but not great either. C-class expeditions, on the other hand, yeah, they kinda suck. You'll see what I mean. Now, if you're thinking right now, Kanaju, this is just a regular tier list with No Man's Sky icons instead of, regular letters. That's not a twist. You fool. I was saving the twist for this exact moment, for I will also be including X-Class and Sentinel class on my tier list. Now, as you may know, X-Class modules in the game can have stats ranging from S-Class or beyond to even worse than C-Class. Usually worse than C-Class. But hey, every now and again you'll find something worth keeping. Sentinel class upgrades, also known as anomalous class or forbidden upgrades, they have the potential to be even better than S-class modules, and tend to fetch a pretty penny from upgrade vendors. So, how will these two factor into a tier list? Well, confusingly of course. So let's get started. Full spoilers for every expedition will follow. Although, considering it's likely that you'll never get to play any of these past expeditions again, this really shouldn't be an issue. Sorry, friends. Alright, let's begin with the first expedition ever, the Pioneers, released alongside the aptly named Expeditions Update on March 31st, 2021. This was our first taste of what an expedition could be. I wasn't personally hyped for this new game mode, but I ended up loving the feature by the end of it. So, it sounds like an A or an S class, right? Well, let me read you some of the milestone requirements. Farm 35 plants, complete 15 fleet expeditions, learn 50 alien words, steal 30 whispering eggs, collect 50 storm crystals, destroy 50 sentinels, earn 30 Explorers Guild standing, discover 35 unclaimed systems, chart 60 waypoints. You get the idea. It was a grind fest. Why 15 fleet expeditions? Is that more fun than, say, 10? No, but it extends the playtime. Why 50 storm crystals? Is that more fun than like 25 or just 20? No, but it extends the playtime. 30 Explorers Guild standing? Really? And discovering 35 new systems and charting 60 waypoints might sound easy, if incredibly time consuming, but you have to remember, everyone starts on the same planet in an expedition, so all of the systems in the local area had already been discovered by the time you got there. You really had to go out of your way to find undiscovered ones, especially since they aren't marked on the map, so it was just kind of like hoping and praying, Because of all this, the expedition ended up taking like 25 hours compared to the usual 4 to 6 that we see nowadays. And geez Louise, it was a grind. But I loved it. I felt quite accomplished by the end of it. Of course, that might have been due to it having one of the best prize offerings of any expedition. It's the only expedition to have a buildable flag, which I sorely wish would make a return. It had the 3rd jetpack ever as a reward, a golden helmet, and of course my favorite expedition reward of all time, the Golden Vector. This is the only unique starship model in the game, meaning that not only is its color palette not available through ProcGen, the royal ornaments that adorn it also can't be found on any other non-royal ship in the game. It's also one of the only ships in the game that doesn't force you to have a photon cannon installed. Based on the iconic Alpha Vector, this ship is the main reason this expedition isn't starting the list in the X class. This expedition was grindier than it needed to be. There wasn't a single unique feature that wasn't already part of the normal game. There was no lore or narrative to discover, and I couldn't point to a coherent theme if I tried. However, the rewards were as good as they get, which is why I'm placing the first expedition, Pioneers, in C class. Before I move on though, when they reran this expedition last winter, they did reduce the grind considerably, and I would say that version of the expedition is the ideal way for new players to experience the game. But as an expedition, it was still pretty boring. Moving on though, Expedition 2, Beachhead, released May 17th, 2021, the day after Pioneers ended. This was the shortest expedition by far. It ran for only 2 weeks, and I believe it only took a couple of hours or so to beat. The first 4 phases were pretty much like a less grindy and less annoying version of Pioneers. You know, find a hot planet, discover 10 star systems, learn 10 Gek words, that kind of stuff. It wasn't until Phase 5 that things got spicy. This was the first time Hello Games implemented encrypted milestones in order to protect players from spoilers. Coincidentally, players couldn't unlock the final milestone until we collectively reached a research goal. And when that wall finally came down, I don't think anyone could believe what they saw. It turned out the entire expedition was a surprise crossover event with Mass Effect, the only crossover event ever in No Man's Sky. The final milestones involved summoning the Normandy itself into the No Man's Sky universe, and this ending was easily one of my favorite in-game moments of all time. It was the first time a large ship had ever flown through a planet's atmosphere, and it created the foundation of the frigate flyovers we have today. On top of that, you could then add the Normandy itself to your fleet. The only recon class vessel in the game, the Normandy is one of the best 2 frigates, and I regularly send it out on expeditions alone. So this is another tough one, because besides the usual decal and stuff, the other rewards were just regular Quicksilver items, the majority of which I already owned. So the majority of the gameplay and rewards were pretty lame, but that last phase and crossover event were pretty epic. So I'm going to put this one in B class. If you don't care about Mass Effect, there really wasn't much going on in this expedition. It wasn't bad, and it didn't waste your time, but it was sort of like a one-trick pony. After this expedition concluded, we had to wait over 3 months for Expedition 3, Cartographers, to begin. This was an odd one. It didn't have any new lore or any new gameplay mechanics. However, its premise was utterly unique. You spent the majority of the expedition marooned on a single planet. Just you and thousands of your best friends, that is. In order to repair the universe's least repairable ship, you had to survive several cycles on a single toxic world. That meant building bases, scanning everything, and becoming intimately familiar with your temporary prison. You couldn't buy another ship to leave, and you couldn't fly around in your own, so this was truly a terrestrial trial. I ran around, rode companions, piloted exocraft, and built teleporters in order to navigate without a ship. It was an interesting experience, and it really highlighted the survival mechanics that had originally defined the game. It was super buggy though, and I would often lose tons of progress, repeatedly, due to crashes. And in case you're thinking I should have saved more, save points and getting out of my ship were what crashed the game. It was, it was hell. But finally leaving the planet after such an ordeal provided a sense of pride and accomplishment, unique in the freedom it provided. So where do I rank it? I'm going to put it in B class. It didn't utilize any unique gameplay mechanics, and there wasn't a story per se, but its theming was strong as heck. You felt stranded, you felt trapped, and when you finally repaired your ship, you felt free. The rewards were cool for builders, but they didn't necessarily fit the theme. You got a bunch of cave building parts, a bubble jetpack trail, and a biological horror companion, which was, kind of lame. So yeah, B class seems appropriate. So after 3 expeditions, the new feature, or game mode, was looking a little lackluster. Rewards seemed to have dropped off after Expedition 1. Expedition 2 was the only one with any kind of unique lore, but it only lasted a couple minutes. And Cartographers was a cool survival challenge for those looking to test themselves, but it didn't offer any new gameplay mechanics besides essentially extending the opening tutorial over several hours. So how did Hello Games follow this up when it came time to release Expedition 4 right before Halloween? Well, they blew everyone's expectations right out of the water. Expedition 4, Emergence, is the perfect expedition. It had an actual narrative that played out across all 5 phases. It had unique lore to discover. Its theme was incredibly well executed. Focusing on Titan worms, they not only added a unique planet type to the game, exclusively for this expedition, the worm-infested planet, they also added new enemies, the Titan worm larva. The expedition UI was unique, there were unique resources and collectibles, and everything was totally coherent. It was an action-packed adventure. As you made your way across the galaxy on your way to confront the Atlas about the corruption, you would hunt down the nests of Titan worms and uncover the history of a cult of worm worshippers. And at the end of it all, you claimed one of their eggs for yourself, hatching it into one of countless unique variations. The rewards were also perfectly tuned. A jetpack trail based on infection, a unique helmet that would make you look like a sandworm, fireworks that exploded into bursts of flesh and rot, the skull of a Titan worm to place in your base as a trophy. It was all so perfect. You can probably tell where this masterpiece is going. S-Class, baby! If there was one expedition I'd recommend to anyone given the chance, it would be this one. So, if Hello Games followed up 3 middling expeditions with a masterpiece, what would they follow up the masterpiece with? Well, So, funny story, they forgot how to make expeditions. Expedition 5 Exobiology released February 2022, following the Sentinel update. You know, the update which completely overhauled ground combat and added tons of new Sentinel enemies and tech. So, in a move that still baffles me to this day, Exobiology made sure to not include any Sentinel combat or mechanics whatsoever. This made the expedition feel completely disconnected from the new gameplay. On top of this, Exobiology didn't add anything new to make up for it. So no new mechanics, and once again no new lore or story. It was almost Pioneers again, but luckily it had a bit of a theme this time, exobiology. That meant you would discover creatures, photograph creatures, feed creatures, adopt creatures, gather large amounts of multiple types of milks and eggs from creatures. Did I mention the part about searching 50 individual dung samples? It was all standard, grindy stuff again. Especially following Emergence, this was a real head-scratcher. What makes it even weirder, though, are the expedition rewards. This expedition began the trend of including 3 posters as a reward. Besides those exobiology posters, though, I want you to listen to these other rewards. And do keep in mind, this released alongside the Sentinel update. You get a Sentinel jetpack trail, exotic companion armor, which matches the new Royal Multi-Tools, only available in Sentinel pillars, an exotic jetpack, which also matches said multi-tool, and finally an actual damn Sentinel quad. In case you missed it, all of these rewards seem tailored towards the Sentinel expedition, and while the Sentinel quad was a dream come true, the expedition was ultimately a disappointment in my eyes. With Pioneers, we had the novelty of the first expedition to carry the lackluster gameplay design, but with Exobiology, we were following up the greatest expedition ever. We knew how good these were supposed to be. Because of that, I'm placing Exobiology in the X class. Its milestones were boring and grindy, its theme felt disconnected from its corresponding update, and its rewards, while not terrible, felt like the remnants of a completely different and probably much cooler expedition that we never saw. Looking at the board right now, we seem to be all over the place. We went from the highest rated expedition to the lowest. The benefit of this is that expectations were reset by the time the next one came around. Launched on April 14th, 2022 following the Outlaws update, Expedition 6, the Blighted, demonstrated everything that Exobiology should have been. The Outlaws update was all about pirates, so the Blighted expedition fittingly gave us a swashbuckling pirate adventure. Throughout all 5 phases, we're hot on the trail of a band of pirates known as the Blight. We're rescuing freighters from pirates, exploring the oceans for sunken treasure, and recovering the fragments of a pirate treasure map. That's right, we're on a good old-fashioned treasure hunt. And while finally putting the pieces together and digging up an actual buried chest of treasure is pretty cool, they took it one step further. You see, these aren't your standard space pirates you're dealing with. These are intergalactic space pirates. You eventually track down a portal that they jerry-rigged, and you're transported to the center of the galaxy. From here, you take a leap of faith and end up settling down in a completely different galaxy. It's awesome. And as someone who normally sticks to the Euclid galaxy, hopping between galaxies in search of pirate treasure was too cool of a premise for me not to smile. The rewards weren't anything to write home about, but they weren't bad. The starship trail that makes it look like your ship is about to explode is pretty great, and the cape is neat too. The floating cube was pretty funny for, reasons. Those who know. But overall, this was a very solid expedition. Nothing groundbreaking about it necessarily, but it had a consistent theme, non-grindy milestones, and enough surprises to keep it interesting. Combine that with a short enough runtime to keep it from getting boring, and I'm putting it in A class. While I doubt this will be anyone's favorite expedition, it was a perfect example of how to emphasize and update new features in a fun way. What came next continued this trend of quality. However, Expedition 7 Leviathan made a much larger impact, I would say. Released as a standalone expedition on May 25th, 2022, Leviathan was crazy. Yeah, let's call it crazy. Whereas every other expedition was a pretty safe way to introduce new players to the game's numerous mechanics, Leviathan was the equivalent of an ambush on the part of the developers. Firstly, they made this a permadeath expedition. Permadeath. In case you're not familiar with the term, that means if you die, you lose all of your progress, and you have to restart from scratch. This wouldn't be too bad normally, except Hello Games thought it would be funny to go all in. If they were going to make this a challenge, they weren't going to pull any punches. Every rendezvous was a death trap. And I'm not just talking about the literal death trap ambushes they added, specifically to kill you when your guard was down. I mean the planets themselves. Sharp cliffs, deadly lightning storms, aggressive predators, aggressive sentinels, aggressive pirates. Heck, every rendezvous system was a war zone. You had to say a prayer to the Atlas every time you exited your ship, or you'd face some unholy bug killing you for no reason. It was brutal. Okay, so I might be exaggerating a little bit. If you played patiently and didn't use your jetpack too much, it was actually pretty simple to navigate safely, admittedly. The biggest threat was getting killed by a bug, actually, which did happen to me, by the way. Besides the novelty of the difficulty, though, the expedition actually did a lot of great things. You would gain weapons and upgrades through random memory fragments instead of shops, and that forced you to adapt on the fly. There was also the specter of the Space Leviathan constantly haunting you on your journey. As you would escape the clutches of another death trap, you'd often look up to see a pod of space whales floating overhead. Indeed, you were stuck in a time loop for this very obsession. The story eventually sees you catching up with the Leviathan that's been haunting you all expedition. And upon meeting, you speak with the creature through various dialogue choices. I personally apologized for what I had done, and together we ended the cycle of rebirth with one final death. It was beautiful. And after that, the expedition ceased to be permadeath, and I could finish my remaining milestones in peace. Relative peace. In addition to the Leviathan joining your fleet as one of the most powerful frigates in the game, a temporal starship trail, exclusive cape, and placeable Leviathan model were also reward highlights. So how do I rank an expedition like this? On one hand, Hello Games alienated a large portion of their player base by creating an expedition more difficult than any that had come before. But on the other hand, they catered to a hardcore portion of their player base that had been neglected for years. A lot of people hated this expedition, but a lot of people loved it too, myself included. In fact, upon completion, I almost considered it my favorite expedition, threatening to surpass even Emergence. With all this in mind, I know what I have to do. I apologize in advance. I am placing Expedition 7, Leviathan, in the Forbidden class, the Anomalous class. In other words, it has the potential to be greater than S-class for many people. However, it could easily fall well below that for others. Still, based on the criteria of unique mechanics and storytelling, it's objectively not a bad offering. It's just more niche than many people would like. But hey, if you think I'm totally wrong, feel free to leave a respectful comment below. The end of the Leviathan expedition brings us to the present day. July 2022 saw the release of the Endurance update and its corresponding expedition, Polestar. With Endurance bringing a freighter and space overhaul to the game, Polestar's theme makes perfect sense. You play as a freighter captain who has recently awoken from cryosleep to a damaged freighter and demoralized crew. Besides your old freighter, your only means of transportation is a jalopy. A flaming jalopy, no less. With no hyperdrive installed and planetary base building disabled, you're forced to build up your freighter base and use your shuttle, only as well, that shuttle. Warping around for my freighter bridge and only jumping in my ship to pick up groceries was a pretty fun change of pace. All of the milestones are pretty peaceful, except for destroying pirates, and I never even installed a weapon on my multi-tool or additional hazard protection in my suit. It was that laid back. And while it's probably the simplest expedition outside of Beachhead, I have to say it was really well done. For starters, the introduction is the first new introduction we've gotten since launch, with new voice lines and everything. There's a subtle backstory to discover as you travel that actually ends up being pretty cool by the end. On top of that, you discover the technology needed to create a black hole within your freighter and warp across the galaxy, creating a new form of exploration. It's all very well done, and the fleet and squadron mechanics make for a nice sense of progression, as you're all but an admiral by the end of the expedition. The rewards are pretty standard, I suppose, but the Cape and Freighter Trail are among the coolest available. Plus, those base building parts are nothing to sneeze at either. Overall, I genuinely enjoyed this expedition from start to finish. It introduced us to a range of recently added features, and it did it all from a fresh perspective. What more could you ask for? I'm placing this in the A class, as it's an easy recommendation for me, and I believe it's a success in expedition design. So, that's the last expedition for now. Let's see how things stacked up. So Pioneer started off a little weak, though with incredible rewards. It was followed by 2 expeditions that independently improved on certain aspects, but neither could tie it all together. It wasn't until Emergence that Hello Games showed us the true potential of how great expeditions could be. Sadly, Exobiology showed us the potential for how bad expeditions could be. Seriously, who thought standing around in a field of feces searching for 50 piles of shit was a good? They came out the other side, though, with 3 strong expeditions in a row. I find this really encouraging, as it seems like expeditions are getting better than they've ever been, and they're also getting more experimental. Hopefully, they'll keep getting even better. But what about you? Do you think expeditions are on the right track? Or would you take them in another direction? Do you agree with my tier list? If not, leave yours in the comments below. I'll take a look. And if you're curious about my previous review video, I'll put a link in the description below. Let me know which format you like better, by the way. If y'all enjoy this tier list, I'd love to do more. Seriously. I spent a lot of time making these class icons since the ones in game are all very pixelated, so yeah, so much time. Leave a like if you appreciate the time I spent on those icons. Or if you like the video, that works too, either one. Thanks as always for watching. This channel is only successful thanks to you. Yes, you, person who's currently watching this. If you're interested in making my day, or just more No Man's Sky variety content, subscribing is just a click away. Thanks again for your support, everyone, and try not to get too heated in the comments down there. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!